With the look fixed upon him, in her paleness and wildness, she panted out in his arms imploringly. "Oh, my dear friend, my husband!" "Your husband, Lucy?" "Charles." "What of Charles?" "Here." "Here? In Paris?" "Has been here some days, 3 or 4, I don't know how many. I can't collect my thoughts. An errand of generosity brought him here, unknown to us. He was stopped at the barrier and sent to prison." The old man uttered an irrepressible cry. Almost at the same moment the beg of the great gate rang again, and a loud noise of feet and voices came pouring into the courtyard. "What is that noise?" said the doctor, turning towards the window. "Don't look!" cried Mr. Lorry. "Don't look out, Manette. For your life, don't touch the blind." The doctor turned, with his hand upon the fastening of the window, and said, with a cool, bold smile, "My dear friend, I have a charmed life in this city. I have been a Bastille prisoner. There is no patriot in Paris, in France, who, knowing me to have been a prisoner in the Bastille, would touch me, except to overwhelm me with embraces or carry me in triumph. My old pain has given me a power that has brought us through the barrier and gained us news of Charles here and brought us here. I knew it would be so. I knew I could help Charles out of all danger. I told Lucy so. What is that noise?" His hand was again upon the window. Okay, so we're going to stop. So here an interesting thing happens. Because of Charles Darnay's past life as the heir to the Marquis Saint Evremond, he is imprisoned. On the flip side, because of Dr. Manette's past life as a prisoner of the Bastille, he is in a position that no one else in France is. He is honored by the revolutionaries. He is considered a great patriot. He is in a position to save Charles. And so we have this very kind of flip-flop position between these two men. Picking it up again with "Don't look." "Don't look!" cried Mr. Lorry, absolutely desperate. "No, Lucy, my dear, nor you." He got his arm around her and held her. "Don't be so terrified, my love. I solemnly swear to you that I know of no harm having happened to Charles, that I had no suspicion even of his being in this fatal place. What prison is he in?" "La Force." "La Force! Lucy, my child, if ever you were brave and serviceable in your life, and you were always both, you will compose yourself now to do exactly as I bid you. For more depends upon it than you can think or I can say. There is no help for you in any action on your part tonight. You cannot possibly stir out. I say this because what I must bid you to do for Charles's sake is the hardest thing to do of all. You must instantly be obedient, still, and quiet. You must let me put you in a room at the back here. You must leave your father and me alone for 2 minutes. And as there are life and death in the world, you must not delay. I will be submissive to you. I see in your face that you know I can do nothing else than this. I know you are true." The old man kissed her and hurried her into his room and turned the key. Then came hurrying back to the doctor and opened the window and partly opened the blind and put his hand upon the doctor's arm and looked out with him in the courtyard. Looked out upon a throng of men and women, not enough in number or near enough to fill the courtyard, not more than 40 or 50 in all. The people in possession of the house had let them in at the gate, and they had rushed in to work at the grindstone. It had evidently been set up there for their purpose, as in a convenient and retired spot. But such awful workers, and such awful work. The grindstone had a double handle, and turning at it madly were 2 men whose faces, as their long hair flapped back when the whirlings of the grindstone brought their faces up, were more horrible and cruel than the visages of the wildest savages in their most barbarous disguise. False eyebrows and false mustaches were stuck upon them, and their hideous countenances were all bloody and sweaty, and all awry with howling, and all staring and glaring with beastly excitement and want of sleep. As these ruffians turned and turned, their matted locks now flung forward over their eyes, now flung backward over their necks, some women held wine to their mouths that they might drink, and what with the dripping blood and what with dropping wine, and what with stream of sparks struck out of the stone, all the wicked atmosphere seemed gore and fire. The eye could not detect one creature in the group free from the smear of blood. Shouldering one another to get next to the sharpening stone were men stripped to the waist, with the stain all over their limbs and bodies, men in all sorts of rags, with the stain upon those rags, men devilishly set off with spoils of women's lace and silk and ribbon, with the stain dyeing those trifles through and through. Hatchets, knives, bayonets, swords, all brought to be sharpened, were all red with it. Some of the hacked swords were tied to the wrist of those who carried them, with strips of linen and fragments of dress, ligatures various in kind, but all deep of the one color. And as the frantic wielders of these weapons snatched them from the stream of sparks and tore away into the streets, that same red hue was red in their frenzied eyes, eyes which any unbrutalized beholder would have given 20 years of life to petrify with a well-directed gun. All this was seen in a moment, as the vision of a drowning man or of any human creature at any very great pass could see a world if it were there. They drew back from the window, and the doctor looked for explanation in his friend's ashy face. "They are," Mr. Lorry whispered the words, glancing fearfully around at the locked door, "murdering the prisoners. If you are sure of what you say, if you really have the power you think you have, as I believe you have, make yourself known to these devils and get taken to La Force. It may be too late, I don't know, but let it not be a minute later." So we're going to stop. So here, Mr. Lorry has sent Lucy back to a room and locked her in so that she cannot see. And it's because Mr. Lorry knows something that neither Dr. Manette nor Lucy know. These crowds of people, 40 or 50 people, come in stained with blood. It's in their hair, it's on their hands, it's on their faces. And they're bringing their weapons to this grindstone to resharpen them. They have been at work that night. They have been murdering people that night. And they come back to the grindstone because they have used their weapons so much in the last hours that they need to resharpen them. And what Mr. Lorry whispers to Dr. Manette is that they are going to the prisons and murdering the prisoners. And he says, "I don't know if it's too late. Charles may already be dead. But you need to go to the prison now if you really think that you have as much authority and as much respect with the revolutionaries as you think you have. You need to go now and check this out." So picking it back up with Dr. Manette. Dr. Manette pressed his hand, hastened bareheaded out of the room, and was in the courtyard when Mr. Lorry regained the blind. His streaming white hair, his remarkable face, and the impetuous confidence of his manner, as he put the weapons aside like water, carried him in an instant to the heart of the concourse at the stone. For a few minutes there was a pause and a hurry and a murmur, and the unintelligible sound of his voice, and then Mr. Lorry saw him, surrounded by all, and in the midst of a line of 20 men long, all linked shoulder to shoulder and hand to shoulder, hurried out with cries of "Live the Bastille prisoner! Help for the Bastille prisoner's kindred in La Force! Room for the Bastille prisoner in front here! Save the prisoner Evrémonde at La Force!" and 1,000 answering shouts. So here we discover that Dr. Manette is not wrong about the place that he holds in the people of France's hearts. As soon as he goes out there and he explains to them, "This has happened, my son-in-law is in the prison, we need to go get him out," they start shouting, "Yes, let's go save him," and they get taken that way. All right, picking it up with he closed. And here he is, Mr. Lorry. He closed the lattice again with a fluttering heart, closed the window and the curtain, hastened to Lucy and told her that her father was assisted by the people and gone in search of her husband. He found her child and Miss Pross with her, but it never occurred to him to be surprised by their appearance until a long time afterwards, when he sat watching them in the quiet as the night knew. Lucy had, by that time, fallen into a stupor on the floor at his feet, clinging to his hand. Miss Pross had laid the child down on his own bed, and her head had gradually fallen on the pillow beside her pretty charge. Oh, the long, long night, with the moans of the poor wife, and oh, the long, long night, with no return of her father, and no tidings. Twice more in the darkness the bell at the great gate sounded, and the interruption was repeated, and the grindstone whirled and spluttered. "What is it?" cried Lucy, affrighted. "Hush! The soldiers' swords are sharpened here," said Mr. Lorry. "The place is a national property now, and used as a kind of armory, my love." Twice more in all, but the last spell of work was feeble and fitful. Soon afterward the day began to dawn, and he softly detached himself from the clasping hand and cautiously looked out again. A man, so besmeared that he might have been a sorely wounded soldier creeping back to consciousness on a field of slain, was rising from the pavement by the side of the grindstone and looking about him with a vacant air. Shortly, this worn-out murderer descried in the imperfect light one of the carriages of Monseigneur, and staggering to that gorgeous vehicle, climbed in at the door and shut himself up to take his rest on its dainty cushions. The great grindstone, earth, had turned when Mr. Lorry looked out again, and the sun was red on the courtyard. But the lesser grindstone stood alone there in the calm morning light, with a red upon it that the sun had never given and would never take away.